Hello, and welcome to When They Popped. I'm Kelsey, and today Mary is moving, so subbing in for her, I am joined by my childhood bestie, my go-to sorority formal date, my wedding officiant, and longtime keeper of all my secrets, my dear friend, Tucker. Tucker, thanks for joining while Mary takes this week off.
What an intro. That's so exciting. Hi, Foob. Foob
Tucker
is what I
called me-
call Kelsey.
Yes.
She since like 8th grade when she wore these Fubu socks, and I just would call her Foob. I'm so excited to be here. Mary, good luck with your move.
So, Tucker, for our listeners to help understand how deep our relationship runs, how would you describe our relationship to our listeners?
Intimate.
God.
I mean, you know everything about me since I was 5. So I would say like the reason why I'm keeping your secrets is so that you'll keep mine, babe.
True.
Till the grave.
Relationship.
Generally, if I wasn't going to say intimate, I would say my relationship with Kelsey is just like, you're the person that I'm most comfortable being my weirdest self in front of.
Oh, Tucker, that means so much to me. And obviously it goes the same way. You were actually my first boyfriend. So how does that make you?
I mean, how does that make you feel?
Tucker's gay. Tucker's gay now.
Gay. Well, technically I was gay then.
Technically he was gay then too.
In 2nd grade, I was actually probably at my peak gay.
It's true. But I'm just so excited you're here because we're talking about something that we lived through together. So obviously our podcast is all about nostalgia, and so many of the memories that evoke talking through these topics involve you, like singing Lucky on the recess hill while our other best friend, who's a girl, Stephanie,
there you go again. Wow, if this podcast is if this is how it's gonna go, Maggie,
coming to yell at you in front of all these people again,
Maggie. You out for all these people.
Do you want me to beat you out in front of all these people again, Maggie? Would you like me to get in a public fight with you again? Are you ready for that?
We also talked about my Super Sweet 16, and I'm pretty sure I mentioned that. That's something that we still regularly quote.
I'm really glad we're talking about this instance. And for the record, I've been dying to guest host on this podcast because it's just bloody brilliant. Sorry, I was just in London this week.
Oh, God. Had to fit that in there, didn't?
No, that was really a slip.
Cheerio.
But because what we're talking about here today was the dawn of my love of pop culture. It was the first time I went on eonline.com.
Oh, wow, that's huge. I didn't know that. I'm so
Yeah.
glad we picked this. Should we just get into it then?
Yeah.
Without further ado, we are going to talk about the biggest scandal of the early 2000s. I mean, easily, this had to be it. Brangelina. And I remember that this was just the biggest celeb news story. As you mentioned, the first thing that made you read online gossip columns. We were all glued to Perez Hilton during this time also.
Totally.
So we need to retell all the deets, and we're going to school everyone on Brangelina 101. So we're going to start at the very beginning. Tucker, interrupt me whenever. We're just going to go through year by year of this saga. So let's start at the very beginning when Brad met Jen. I just feel like collectively, my pop culture consciousness, they were together. I never knew just Jen or just Brad. I only knew Brad and Jen together. Would you agree? Do you have memories of them separately?
No, because they were together for 7 years, from start to finish. I think they got together in 98 if they got married in 2000.
Yeah, I think it was 97. Well, we'll go through the timeline, but it just goes to show that when we were growing up, it was just Brad and Jen. It wasn't single Jen, single Brad. For us, it made this moment, this scandal, all the more impactful because they were just the iconic couple of our time. So let's go back to the very beginning. The year was 1994, and Brad and Jen are first introduced by their managers, who were also friends. And Jen described him as this sweet guy from Missouri, a normal guy. I don't know any normal guys that look like that.
A nice corn-fed boy.
Yeah, Shania Twain made a lyric about him, but go off, girl. So
I love how they also people used to be introduced by their managers.
I know.
Now it's just people just slide into your DMs, but it's I want to be introduced by somebody's manager.
Or was it a PR relationship?
It was love.
I believe it was love too, but I think the managers also did benefit from business opportunities from it, I'm sure. So 4 years later, they go on their first date. Brad had just broken up with Gwyneth Paltrow. who I know you're a huge fan of, Tucker, and Jennifer had broken up with Tate Donovan. I don't even know who that is.
Jimmy? Yes, you do. It's Jimmy Cooper from the OC.
Oh my God, Jimmy Cooper?
Yeah, Tate Donovan. Yeah. Cool. And also, like, the Brad and Gwyneth relationship, like, I think that should have its, like, sequel episode.
I agree. I feel like there's been a lot of memes about Brad dressing like the people who he's dating at the time. And I think he had that long blonde hair, and he and Gwyneth had a similar haircut back then.
Yeah, it was like a sleek, like, Euro vibe.
So we get their first date. In 2004, Jen told Diane Sawyer that the evening was really easy and the date was really fun. And they finally, after months of speculation, on September 12th, 1999, make their red carpet debut at the Emmys. I need everyone to stop what they're doing and Google Jen and Brad at the Emmys on September 1999, because Brad is wearing these silver sunglasses that can only be described as a Bug's Life core, and he has a goatee that I wish to make no comment on. Jen is wearing these like messy dreads, and I think she looks amazing. What say you of this look, Tucker, to debut the relationship of the century?
I love Brad Pitt's sunglasses. I think that they are actually very relevant in today's fashion zeitgeist.
It's giving Jessica after she got LASIK, though. Do you not agree?
Absolutely. But I'm also like kind of here for that, the alien superstar look. I hate Jen's hair in this. I only think that because it's like you only have one chance to make your first red carpet debut. And in 27 years, I want to tell Jen that there will be a podcast about people talking about this look called When They Popped. But, you know, all in all, I think it really gave America what they needed at the time. It was Jennifer Aniston and Brad Pitt, apple pie, red carpet, just warming the hearts of everybody.
Oh my God, Tucker is the biggest stan of Brad and Jen. I'm sorry.
They're the gold standard. They're two golden retrievers.
Isn't there that theory that like there's one golden retriever and one black cat in the relationship?
Yeah, well, the black cat was Angelina Jolie.
Tucker, you're skipping ahead. Okay, we'll get there. Okay, so Brad and Jen, 1999, make their red carpet debut in September. Just 3 months later, they confirmed they were engaged at a Sting concert. Brad reportedly spent a cool $500,000 on the ring. But I Googled it, and apparently that's the equivalent to $937,000 in today's dollars.
What do they say? It should be 3 months' pay.
It's not bad. So July 29 rolls around and they get married in an intimate but rich ceremony in front of 200 guests. The wedding took place on a bluff overlooking the Pacific Ocean in Malibu. Brad reportedly wanted the private estate where they got married to look like a Zen garden. I guess he's very into architecture and interior design, I've learned through this researching process. He ordered 50,000 flowers, including roses, wisteria, tulips, and lotus flowers. Jen wore a glass-beaded low-back wedding gown by Lawrence Steele. They danced to The Way You Look Tonight. How sweet. And the celebration boasted a 40-person choir, lobster meal, and a Melissa Etheridge performance. Is this a Real Housewives episode? Remember when Melissa Etheridge popped up in a Beverly Hills episode? There was also a 13-minute fireworks show. I know for a fact that fireworks, I think you pay for them like by the minute. And it starts at like $250K for like 5 minutes or something.
I love it how celebrities will say they had an intimate wedding and it cost $1 million, this wedding.
It literally cost $1 million, which is, again, thanks to my inflation calculator, $1.8 million today.
Yeah, that's a lot for one night.
For 200 people. What is it? 1.8
for
million?
For a 4-year marriage.
Well, we'll get there, Tucker.
Everybody knows how it ends. No one's on the edge of their seat to wonder what happens.
You're spoiling the ending. Okay, anyways, it's now November 2001. Brad made a guest appearance on Friends. And Tucker, I can't believe that I don't know this about you, and I'm like embarrassed to ask this, but are you even a Friends fan?
No, I was never really into like sitcoms. I needed more drama. So Sex and the City is really as close as I get to that.
That makes sense. Well, have you seen this episode where...
Of course, yeah.
He like hates Rachel Green, and it's like
I've seen all the big episodes because you still have to be relevant in conversation and know what's going on.
Right, you're like a loser if you're like, oh no, I don't like
Friends. It's my version of current events.
So February 2004 rolls around and Friends' 10-year run is coming to an end, and everyone's asking Jen, what are you going to do after this lightning in a bottle TV shows that put you the top of the A list is over. And she is very vocal about taking this time to settle down and start a family. She told The Guardian in an interview that she was ready to have a baby. She said that everyone wants to do it all. She's just truly looking forward to slowing down. But just a few months later, in May 2004, trouble in paradise is brewing. This is when the cheating rumors between Brad and his Mr. and Mrs. Smith co-star Angelina Jolie begin swirling. Okay, so now it's January 7th, 2005. All of these rumors are swirling, and Brad and Jen announced their separation after 5 years of marriage. This was the day. This was a couple days before my birthday, and I remember it totally overshadowed everything. We couldn't stop talking about it because this was the topic du jour. So this was their official statement. This was the result of much thoughtful considerations, and that it was not caused by any of the speculation reported by the tabloid media, and that they would remain committed and caring friends with great love and admiration for one another. What do you remember feeling when you heard that they were officially breaking up after months of these rumors?
I think that in a lot of ways, it was very polarizing for the public because they either wanted it to be true or they really, really didn't want it to be true. And I feel as though tabloid culture during that time was so much more rampant because people didn't have their own voice except through their publicist to be able to just quickly address things or move on. So the speculation and the curiosity is what ultimately killed this relationship.
Such a good point. There was no social media to shut anything down in real time. These rumors would just get bigger and bigger and become lore within themselves. And I think it's pretty ballsy that they address the rumors head on in their statement too. They're trying to shut down any speculation around that. And I think that speaks a lot on Jen, that she was willing to stick up for Brad in that moment. And to me, that was her saying I don't want you to be raked across the coals as being the reason for this divorce.
Well, also, I feel as though in her way, she didn't want Angelina Jolie to be the center of her divorce. You know, I think that if I was getting divorced from Brad Pitt and I knew that would be the likely assumption, I would nip that in the bud too from a PR perspective. Make my divorce about me, not Angelina Jolie.
It's my party.
But didn't they say something too in the statement where they were like, for those of you who are interested in this kind of conversation, it didn't have anything to do with the tabloid rumors. And I really liked that too, because I was like, don't fucking patronize me.
It is so patronizing and condescending, but I get it. If that's your life and your marriage that people are talking about.
Bitch, I'm at the pharmacy, just like everybody else, looking at all these magazine covers. Those were the glory days.
They're separated in January, and then March rolls around. Jen files for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences. In April of 2005, so we're just 1 month, March, April, 1 month later, photos of Brad and Angelina on a beach in Kenya are leaked. This was coast to coast front page news because this showed that Angelina was the reason for their divorce. And how could he be moving on so quickly with her unless there was something going on? I mean, I thought that this was a case of them just being stalked to death, because we know that the only way that we got access to these celebrities was through really intrusive paparazzi tactics. They would have these long lenses that would take photos from miles away. There were helicopters and boats, and they would do these crazy tactics to get these photos of celebrities. So I think we all assumed that these photos were a result of that sort of hunt that these paparazzis would go on in pursuit of getting a photo like this that could guarantee them a payday that could send all their children to college and then some. Well, just recently, it came to light that these photos were leaked by what we'll call an unlikely source.
Mm-hmm.
Rolling Stone's co-founder, Jan Wenner, came out with a memoir a couple years ago, and he claims that Us Weekly worked with Angelina Jolie herself, who gave a tip that they were staying at a resort on the coast of Africa with Brad, who was still technically married to Jen at the time. I mean, she filed, but nothing was settled by that time. The photographer was told not only where they were staying, but also given details about the time of like their daily walk, along with a suggestion of where they could be secretly photographed. Wenner said in his memoir, "We got the photo, we got the proof. We had the worldwide scoop, the debut of Brangelina. The tipster was Angelina." I mean, what goes through your mind when you hear that? And when this story came out like 2 years ago?
I believe it 100%. Here's the thing. I think Angelina Jolie is really smart and she's savvy. And I think she knew exactly what she was doing. I think she wanted this to get out. It's also a way for her to control the narrative in a lot of different ways. Like if a story is going to break, you know, you never know. They could have gone to her and said, listen, we have this story. You have the chance to either control it and get in front of it or not. Then there's the other side of me, which is like, oh, she just wanted this out. And it makes so much sense.
What does she have to gain, though, from confirming that, you know, she was the other woman in this relationship? If I put my like PR hat on, something so innocent as a walk on the beach with her young son. I mean, that shows that there's a family unit, that there's now a child, a part of this relationship. But to me, that indicated also that this was much deeper than just like a salacious affair.
I think that was the point too. And we have to understand too where Angelina Jolie was at this time. Like she was making out with her brother. She had married Billy Bob Thornton from underneath Laura Dern while Laura was shooting a movie, you know? So I don't think she was putting her PR hat on at all until this time where she said, listen, like I'm either going to be known as the whore who stole someone's husband, or I'm going to be known in this new way where I am, you know, a United Nations spokesperson. I'm going around to all of these different countries. I'm adopting all of these kids. And now I'm dating this movie star and just deal with it.
The decision to have a kid photographed with them, her son Maddox, was so strategic in that way because it was like, oh, like that looks like a cute family photo of them walking on the beach. I don't know. I think it certainly softened people.
Well, it also means that he's met her kids.
Yes.
You know, which is a huge, huge thing. So it's like, at what point can you label something an affair when, you know, he's essentially like moved in and vacationing with her family?
Right. That's a full-blown relationship then. It's no longer like, oh, you're the other woman. Like you're now the woman. So now it's July 2005. And after this frenzy comes out, all of these vacation photos of Kenya, Brad and Angelina are photographed in this huge, glamorous W magazine spread titled Domestic Bliss. And this multiple page spread depicts them as a happy couple. The photos were taken in March of that year, so the same month that Jen filed for divorce. Very interesting timing. I guess Brad had conceptualized the shoot and he retained the international rights to these photos, so he actually profited from it. I mean, he must have known the stir that this would cause given the backdrop of all the rumors and his separation from Jen. I remember being totally shocked when these came out.
First of all, it's a really baller spread. Like it's a really cool kind of like Slim Aarons-y type spread. If you've never seen it, you should Google it because this is also when like W Magazine was in its heyday too, right? Where it's like a 60-page spread in W. Like it was like the September issue. It was major. I think Brad conceptualizing it was a calculated decision, and I think he totally miscalculated it because July 2005 is also when Mr. and Mrs. Smith came out. And so they were co-stars in this movie that was coming out, and they were creating this kind of like Nancy Meyers-esque kind of spread where they're these two beautiful people in love. There's kids in the shoot. And, you know, it's this really kind of amazing ordeal until you actually realize what's going on and the fact that you're not even 6 months into your separation and divorce and you were accused for so long about crafting this narrative that you didn't cheat. So why do this? It made no sense.
It makes no sense. And we'll get Jen's take on this when we get to her Vanity Fair spread, because that was major. Yeah, I thought it was like just so callous and like rubbing her face in it. That was my first reaction. Like, why would you do this? You know that you're welcoming all this criticism. But we've seen this tactic work with other movies also when people are promoting something like, and it comes out that there's a rumored affair between the two co-stars. Like, didn't this just happen with that Sydney Sweeney movie?
Well, also, isn't it happening with Ariana Grande? Like, it's like basically it's what Angelina Jolie was saying. She's she's like, we can't be friends because you guys are all going to think I'm the other woman. But listen, I'm here to stay and I'm going to shove this down your throat. That means the photo shoot was already done when they were shot off that coast. So she said, listen, like, that's my version of the soft launch. And then this is the hard launch.
Oh, Tucker, I love how you're thinking about this. That makes so much sense. So in September of 2005, we get the article that we could not and still cannot shut up about, the Vanity Fair tell-all, where Jen finally breaks her silence. The unsinkable Jen Aniston. This article rocked our world. Please reread it if it's been a while for you so that you can get reacquainted with it. But Tucker's going to break it down for you in a second anyways. On the cover, I'm sure you all remember, Jen looks amazingly beautiful. She's tan. She's wearing this white oversized shirt, which, by the way, I thought was very Mr. and Mrs. Smith when the house explodes behind them and she's wearing the white button down in the hunter boots. No?
Good for her. That's what I thought. Good for her.
And the cover title says, Jen finally talks and talks and talks and cries and talks. Oh! Okay, Tucker, take me through this article, all the bombshells, what you thought, all the things.
I mean, the article, it came in the peak, or kind of at the end of the peak of Vanity Fair, when Vanity Fair used to be the place where people would go and they would spill their guts. And I think Jen did such a great job for the first 7, 8, 9 months of this divorce, really keeping her mouth shut, which I think says a lot about her, because that narrative, she had no opportunity to clear that up. And this was really the first time that she had spoken out, because she was starting to have all of these films come out. And, she got ahead of it. And she did this very tearful, raw interview with Vanity Fair. The author was Leslie Bennett's. And she went to her house in Malibu and she said within the first few minutes, Jen just immediately started crying. And it was minutes and minutes of raw, tearful, her just really putting it out on the table. She was devastated. She chose to stand by her husband, and to this day, or at least the day in 2005 that she gave the interview, she said, I choose to believe my husband, that nothing started physically until after we were separated. And I thought that was really noble of her. Like, she's saying that after a 60-page W magazine spread and, a trip in Africa. So for her to really say that, I think says a lot about her character. She gets very quippy in there, though. She talks about that 60-page photo spread. And she says this now infamous line where she points at her head and she does a screwdriver hand gesture. And she says, it's like he lost his sensitivity chip or something. And a funny aside about that is, about 10 years ago, I was talking to Kelsey and I was making a comment about something in our personal lives that was going on. And I said, it's like he forgot his sensitivity chip or something. And she called me out so hardcore and said, I know you got that from the Jennifer Aniston Vanity Fair fall 2005 issue. And honestly, I think that was like the seed that was planted for this podcast in general.
Yes. There's a sensitivity chip that's missing. We say that to each other all the time.
There's a sensitivity chip that's missing. In the interview, Courtney Cox is interviewed. I think they were very selective about the other people who were there to back up Jen's story. Mm-hmm. The most interesting part of it, reading it now especially, is Jen talking about motherhood. Vanity Fair talks about how originally, and this is very misogynistic in hindsight, that they were trying to pin it on Jen because Jen was career obsessed and did not want to have children. Yeah. And Brad wanted to have children. So that was kind of Brad's out in the marriage. Jen was very quick to say, no, it's my dream too. And actually in the interview, she says, in 5 years, I will be married and I will have a kid. And, a part of me felt for her in saying that, because she was so raw in this interview that I believe in her saying that she obviously truly believed it. And, that didn't happen, and life changes on a whim. But I think that, she must have felt some kind of pressure in those coming years too, because she had given this interview. But, when Courtney Cox is interviewed, she really backs up her friend, and she talks about how she came to this little beach house in Malibu where she really felt like she could be herself, and how refreshing it was for her to be able to get a comfortable couch, because Brad,
couch.
like, you were at the couch.
The couch, yes.
Was so funny. And they had this comment about when Nicole Kidman divorced Tom Cruise, the editor said to her, "What are you most looking forward to?" And she said, "Wearing high heels," because of their height difference. And she said to Jennifer Aniston, "What's your version of that?" And she said, "I get to sit on a comfortable couch."
Because Brad flew into interior design. He wanted those like uncomfortable, angular, hard surfaces.
Literally, it's like the Sex and the City episode where they're like, all of our chairs are teeny tiny. She lived in this world and now she finally gets to be authentic in her own way of living. And there's a part of the article too where she asks her about something and she just starts crying.
It was the rumors about Brad and Angelina expecting, and she cried for so long that she just couldn't even respond to it. So clearly that was too sensitive, too raw for her to talk about. And the interview, I think it happened in two different places over a few months. So there was like the Malibu house portion, and then months later they met in Chicago where she was filming The Breakup with Vince Vaughn. And I think that's when she asked her, I have to ask you about these rumors that Brad and Angelina are expecting a baby. And that's when she like couldn't stop crying. So that just shows that this was not
I'm like going to start crying.
It's awful. I mean, it's so sad. But you mentioned Courtney Cox, and I thought that Courtney also did a really good job, not standing up for Brad, but being fair to him. Because I'm sure that they got super close over the years. I mean, they were on vacation with them, Courtney and her husband, David Arquette. They were in Anguilla together like the week before they announced their separation. And I feel like Courtney gave Brad a lot of credit for being honest with Jen, that he felt like Brad had this emotional connection to Angelina and that he was like fighting this attraction for a long time. I thought Courtney did a very good job while standing in Jen's corner, still being diplomatic to Brad at the same time.
Yeah, and I think in a reverse psychology kind of way, just remembering what that media was like back then, and I'm curious too, from a female perspective, I also feel like by Courtney being that backup person, but also a mediator in some respects, that it actually legitimized Jen's claims more, because you couldn't say, oh, these are just women that are behaving emotionally or speaking out, trying to avenge this man who wronged them, right? Like, this isn't a woman scorned article. I think Jen and Courtney are very good about giving credit where credit's due on the things that Brad did right. And the fact that, she really did believe that Courtney even says it too, that she believes that Brad did not get physical with Angelina before Jen filed for divorce. And Jen keeps saying that I chose to believe my husband. And I think that, to your earlier point about her really standing by her man, that really made us all feel for Jen, but also made us think like, she really gave it her all in this marriage. She didn't want to get divorced. It was really Brad who did. And Brad felt like he had to go out there and keep on living. And, that he did. It's
interesting because while I feel like Jen herself and even her friends who were interviewed for this piece did not speak poorly of Angelina, the worst thing that she said about Brad was the sensitivity chip thing. But she even, as a fast follow to that, she was like, I'm sure that if I told him that hurt my feelings, he would say like, oh, I can see why that would be inconsiderate, but I really meant it as like an art piece or something. She seemed just so like she didn't want to pile on. However, I feel like this writer definitely is in Jen's corner. I mean, just the way that they wrote about Angelina, she said, quote, in the blink of an eye, the twice divorced Jolie, previously known as a tattooed vixen with a taste for bisexuality, heroin, brotherly incest, mental institutions, and wearing her husband's blood, had morphed into a globetrotting humanitarian who seemed to be channeling Audrey Hepburn. For the 36-year-old Aniston, who had expected to spend the past year being pregnant, the pain of watching this spectacle unfold was compounded by vicious rumors about herself. It's just so interesting. They call Angelina Earth Mother Jolie, and they even worked in the Team Aniston t-shirts and the Team Jolie t-shirts. I mean, you remember
Kitson?
The Kitson t-shirts.
Every time I pass Kitson since I moved to LA, I always think about those t-shirts and like Robertson Boulevard, and it became such a thing, like with Paris and Nikki Hilton, like wearing the shirts down.
You remember who
at
wore
the
what?
Ivy. Paris wore Team Jolie.
Yes, and I was so mad at her. I was like, "What are you doing?" So that
someone had to do it.
But even also, like the colors, like the Angelina colors were black and red, which is just like very like menacing, I feel like, and the Team Aniston shirts were like white and light green. I don't know.
I think Vanity Fair when you do an interview like this, you have to assure Jen's camp that this is going to make her look amazing. And they go to her and they say, listen, we are going to tell your story and we are going to do it in the totally right way. We are going to do your dirty work for you. Right? Like what Vanity Fair wrote about Angelina, like in today's media, I don't think they would do that to, the quote unquote other woman without hearing her side first. To bring up, like heroin and to say bisexuality like that. It's so interesting, but also, it serves Jen's purpose. They were talking shit. The only thing Jen says is that she met her one time on a studio lot and she like pulled over in a golf cart and said, my husband's really looking forward to working with you.
That was crazy to read.
I was like, oh shit. Like she worked that in there too. Like this interview made Jen Aniston look amazing. And it really made us all be Team Jen. And it's not even Team Jen versus Team Angelina. It was just against the situation. It's like, we're really rooting for this person in a terrible time.
We were rooting for you. We were all rooting for you.
I was rooting for you. We were all rooting for you. How dare
you? There's a little Tyra Banks quote. I loved how they worked in the Team Aniston t-shirts were outselling Team Jolie by a margin
25 to 1.
25 to 1. I mean, if they didn't shame Angelina enough within the course of this interview, like that was
I love that they just like walked into like a brick and mortar location on Robertson Boulevard and are like, what are the analytics? What's the reporting for this, for the sales?
Totally. So that was, any last thoughts on the Vanity Fair interview before we move on to what followed?
No, I think we
got all our thoughts. This article, I think I read it, like, I remember having the physical copy and we had it like at my parents' beach house. So there would be some days where I would just like finish my book on the beach early. And this Vanity Fair copy was just always in like the family beach bag. And I would just reread it like for years
it's
after.
So well written. There were like major Vanity Fair covers this year too. That year, I remember like it was the year of like Confessions of a Teenage Movie Queen with Lindsay Lohan, where she opened up about her anorexia and like all of these different things. Like this was the golden age before social media of like celebrity profiles.
God, I love celebrity profiles. I used to imagine I wanted to be an actress when we were growing up, as you know, and I would imagine like what my profile would be like. And it'd be like, Kelsey is sitting surrounded by 5 pugs, snoring softly in the background.
Right. There's a charcuterie board sitting in front of her and she motions to it, but doesn't eat it.
She nibbles on the tiniest piece of cheese.
Just water and hot lemon.
That's how she keeps her youthful glow. Well, that's past for me. Okay, let's fast forward to January 2006 when Angelina and Brad confirmed that they are expecting their first baby together. And this is just 3 months after that Brad and Jen's divorce is finalized. This is also when a judge grants a request to change Maddox and Zahara's last name to Jolie Pitt, and Pitt's legal adoptions of the children are finalized soon thereafter. In May that year, Shiloh Jolie Pitt is born in Namibia. She makes her debut on the cover of People a month later. I remember being shocked that they gave their baby a People cover. I thought that was a little lowbrow for how famous they were.
They donated all the money, and I think it was, I want to say, if I'm remembering correctly, like $4 million for that photo. And it was also a different time in celebrity culture because there were these bounties on their heads that a lot of times it just made more sense that like 2 weeks after the baby's born, we'll do a photo that by the time the thing goes to press, the baby doesn't even look like that anymore.
Right. And it's like, stop following me. You got
it's
the
like,
photo.
There you go. Now back off. Because so like the People magazine thing, People was always like the safe space for celebrities where they could go and People never releases rumors that aren't confirmed.
People is still my Bible for celebrity gossip. I trust them with everything. Unless it's in People, it's not true.
I know. That's how I believed your engagement.
Oh my God. Except they spelled my name wrong. But it's fine.
Listen, I knew exactly who they were talking about.
Okay, so now it's October 2006, and Angelina and Brad come out and say that they are not going to get married until, quote, everyone else in the country who wants to be married is legally able. As a gay man, how does that make you feel, Tucker?
It's just, everything, it depends on who it's coming from and how they say it and how it's intentioned. Like, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. And anything Angelina Jolie says, I'm assuming is in the benefit of her own Angelina life. And I think Angelina really was like the black cat and Brad Pitt was the golden retriever here to make it into like modern day TikTok, where Angelina was really running the show. It was her narrative and it was what she wanted to do. But at the same time, she's a major humanitarian. In terms of Angelina's what she was doing and what she was crafting, like the ends justify the means. It doesn't really matter why people are doing the good. You know, it's really the fact that, you know, they do bring that attention. But I think, of course, she knew exactly what she was doing. You know, I think the fact that she was having kids with Brad so soon after the divorce, it made a lot of sense for her to then put this spin on it. She's like, but we're not going to get married, not until all the gays and all the lesbians and all the, you know, and everybody can.
It's like they can't say anything bad about them because they're doing so much other good in the world. Any article about them would sort of be talking out both sides of their mouth because it's like, smart. Oh yeah, they did a shitty thing, but also look at all the amazing things that they're doing. So also in this month of October 2006, we get when they step out together at the New York City premiere of Angelina's movie, The Good Shepherd. Did you ever see that movie? I remember it got so much hype though because of all of the media frenzy.
Never saw it. I don't know if I've ever really seen any Angelina Jolie movies, actually.
Except Mr. and Mrs. Smith.
Except Mr. and Mrs. Smith and the second movie they were in together.
So this same month in December 2006, we get Angelina's spread in Vogue, where she candidly shares more about her relationship with Brad. So this is now a year after Jen does her tell-all in Vanity Fair. So let's talk about this. Angelina says that she didn't know much about Brad's personal life when they met, but that it was clear that he was with his best friend, someone he loves and respects. But because of the film, they ended up being brought together to, quote, do all these crazy things. And I think we found this strange friendship and partnership that just kind of suddenly happened. I think a few months in, I realized, God, I can't wait to get to work. Anything we had to do with each other, we just found a lot of joy in it together and a lot of real teamwork. We just became kind of a pair. It took until really the end of the shoot for us, I think, to realize that it might mean something more than we'd earlier allowed ourselves to believe. And both knowing that the reality of that was a big thing, something that was going to take a lot of serious consideration. So according to her, the two were just very, very good friends, to use her own words. I just couldn't wait to
get to work. Like, shut up.
Well, according to her, they're just good friends until after Brad and Jen announced their separation in January 2005. So she is holding tight to this narrative that nothing nefarious or salacious was going on except this clear emotional bond and gravitational pull until after they were separated. So
doesn't her, and I wonder what you think too, just because you're in the PR world, her media training kind of reminds me of Meghan Markle's. You know, when she's like, oh, you know, I didn't really know about his personal life before. It's like saying, you know, you don't know about Taylor Swift and Travis Kelsey. It's like, no, it's thrown in your face. I
think that was the biggest misstep that Meghan Markle made. She was always going to be up against so many things. And I think so much of the criticism that she faces is so unfair. All the racist comments and everything, like it's awful. But I wish she could go back in time and unsay that one thing, because I think a lot of people latch on to that and they think she's disingenuous because of it. You get one chance to lose people's trust. And once that happens, it takes so long to rebuild it. And I feel like that really set her off on the wrong foot. I don't know that Angelina was trying to say that. I think what she was trying to do was say, I understood coming into this that Brad had a great marriage and he was in a partnership with his best friend. But unfortunately, we fell in love and we became a team through working together. And it was too strong for either of us to bear. And I don't know. She has to tell her side of the story, but I think the thing, we just stayed very, very good friends. Like, what's the subtext of that text, Angelina?
I also think it's like, if you remember during this time, I don't think people hated Angelina Jolie. You know, people really, I think, were coming around to her media turnaround as this humanitarian, as this mother. And I think some people, you know, they were a really hot couple. Like when Brad and Angelina were on those red carpets, it was like the paparazzi flashes and it was a media sensation like we hadn't really seen since Princess Diana. Like this was the biggest story in the world.
It totally was. Being demonized in the media, though, for being the other woman, I mean, that must have been awful for Angelina. I can't imagine everyone hating you for breaking up America's like golden couple. That must have been insane. So I think a lot of this was her downplaying or just
she shouldn't have called Rolling Stone then.
Or just, right, Angelina, which one is it?
Right.
Or I think it was just her trying to shine more of a light on what the beginning of the relationship actually was. Like, it really just started as this really strong friendship, this really strong partnership, until they couldn't deny that there was something really exciting there that they wanted to explore and they felt like they owed to themselves to explore. So she said that the time they spent getting to know each other before his split with Jen was, quote, not as exciting as what a lot of people would like to believe. We spent a lot of time contemplating and thinking and talking about what we both wanted in life and realized that we wanted very, very similar things. And she said this part killed me. She admitted that it was her son Maddox, who was 4 years old at the time, who helped seal the deal that she and Brad should be a couple. According to Angie in this Vogue interview, she said that one day Maddox, quote, just out of the blue called him dad. It was amazing. We were playing with cars on the floor of a hotel room, and we both heard it and didn't say anything and just looked at each other. So that was probably the most defining moment when he decided that we would all be a family. End quote. When he decided we would all be a family. If I was Jennifer Aniston reading this, I would walk into the ocean.
I'm such a cynic, but like in my head, I'm like, Angelina's like whispering to Maddox, like, go over there and call him dad. I mean, listen, if you spot it, you got it. It probably means it's something that like I would be strategic about if I were Angelina.
So she planted the Kenya photographer and trained her son to loop in Brad.
Yeah, Maddox at 4 years old, going up to Brad Pitt and calling him dad. I would go up to Brad Pitt now at 32 years old and call him dad too.
Not only does she drop this dad bomb, but then Angelina said she'd be willing to meet with Jen, but, quote, that would be her decision and I would welcome it. This, to me, immediately evokes the Carrie Natasha confrontation from Sex and the City. Not only have you ruined my marriage, you've ruined my lunch.
Now, not only have you ruined my marriage, you've ruined my lunch.
And this tooth will never be the same color as this tooth.
I'm very sorry that after much painful dental surgery, this tooth is still a different color than this tooth.
Justice for Jennifer Aniston and justice for Natasha. Because no, I wouldn't meet her. Like,
that's so ballsy to say that.
Talk about what? And to say I would welcome it. It's like it's the equivalent to like meet me out back.
I agree. I would not meet with her either. Okay, it's March 2007. Brad and Angelina go to Vietnam to adopt 3-year-old Pax. Their brood is growing. The Jolie Pitt clan is growing. In February 2008, they arrive at the Independent Spirit Awards with some news. Angelina's pregnant again. And a couple months later, in May at the Cannes Film Festival, it's revealed that she's expecting not one baby, but 2 babies, twins, Basil. She said that they were not expecting twins and they're shocked. So what I remember from this, once we heard that the twins were born, this is when I learned about domain names and the internet, because people were buying what they thought the twins' names would be, like websites in their names.
That's genius.
Well, it's called like domain squatting or something, and there's like all this legislation saying that it should be illegal because it's like,
oh. Well, it's like what people do with handles now. I think celebrities must get the handle of their kid's name before the kid's even born.
This was like the internet version of that. Exactly. So in July, we finally learned that they named their twins Knox Leon and Vivian Marceline. They were born in Nice, France, and they made their debut on the cover of People a month later. And Angelina told the magazine that it's chaos, but they're having a wonderful time as a family of 6. In December 2009, we get a book about Brad and Angelina called Brangelina, The Untold Story of Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie. And the author, who he claims consulted nearly 900 sources. That's a lot of sources. Ian Halperin, that's the name of the author, he made some shocking accusations that Brad had cheated on Angelina. I don't remember ever hearing those like in the tabloids or anything. Do you?
Me neither. Also, like 900 sources. Like, I don't know if that makes it like legitimate. That seems like a lot of work. But what I do like about just going back is all of their sons' names end in an X. Because it was Maddox, Pax, and Knox. And I remember always thinking that was really cool.
I did never notice that. Look at you, Tuck.
I read an article about it. I didn't notice it all on my own.
I'm like, get this man on a Taylor Swift Easter egg TikTok. Okay, so now it's November 2010. They're still not married, but now they have these 6 kids. And Johnny Depp refers to Brad Pitt as Angelina Jolie's husband in a Vanity Fair article. So everyone's like, okay, are you guys married? Are you not? What's going on? September 2011.
Thanks, Johnny Depp.
I know, like what? So in September 2011, Brad comments, we've heard Jen's piece, we've heard Angie's piece, but where has Brad been in all of this? Where was his spread? Well, his quote was not the greatest. Whoever did his media training, I beg you to circle back on that. He told Parade magazine, I spent the 90s trying to hide out, trying to duck the full celebrity cacophony. SAT word. I started to get sick of myself sitting on a couch, holding a joint, hiding out. It started feeling pathetic. It became very clear to me that I was intent on trying to find a movie about an interesting life, but I wasn't living an interesting life myself. I think that my marriage had something to do with it, trying to pretend the marriage was something that it wasn't. Oh, what the fuck does that mean?
Also, like sitting in a mansion on the couch with a joint, that sounds glorious.
Yeah, poor you, Brad. Like, get over it. It's
also, I think his marriage to Jen in the Vanity Fair article, she talks about those being like the happiest times of their marriage, like when they were hiding out and ordering takeout and all of these different things. And it honestly just sounds like Brad had a midlife crisis.
Or they just wanted different things, which is fine. So like maybe Jen was the black cat in that relationship and Brad was more of the golden retriever. Who are we to speculate? But let us speculate anyways.
Yeah.
So later, Brad obviously had to issue an apology for these comments, and his statement is actually cray. He said, quote, "It grieves me that this was interpreted this way. Jen is an incredibly giving, loving, and hilarious woman who remains my friend. It is an important relationship I value greatly. The point I was trying to make is not that Jen was dull, but that I was becoming dull to myself, and that I am responsible for." Does it grieve you, Brad? Do you know who's like actually grieving in all of this? Like your ex-wife.
Do you think during this time, Kels, do you think that Brad and Jen were actually in communication as friends?
No, I don't think that would have been possible for Jen. But I do believe that they're friends now. Like it's pretty well documented that they're friendly. I mean, I am not a strong enough person to stay friendly with someone who like put me through that.
No, I would like to think that I was that cool. Like, I think by now, 20 years later, I think that I could like start to be friends.
Right. Like now, after
if I was like remarried.
Yeah. Exactly. Like a 20-year statute of limitations. I agree with that. So now it's April 2012 and the media are still comparing every move that Angelina and Brad make to Jen. Angelina starts wearing a reported $1 million engagement ring and Brad's manager confirms, yes, it's a promise for the future. The kids are very happy, but there's no set date at this time. Just a couple months later, Jen gets engaged herself to Justin Theroux. They were introduced years earlier in 2007 by a mutual friend, Ben Stiller, on the set of Tropic Thunder, which I guess Theroux co-wrote with him. Did you ever see that movie?
No, not my type of film.
I thought they got in trouble for like blackface or something horrible.
They definitely did.
So I did not see it because of that. But ugh.
I love Jen and Justin Theroux. I love Justin Theroux too. So I just thought that they made they were like the good guys. You rooted for them.
Yeah, they seemed like genuinely happy. And I loved the ring that he got her. He got her an 8-carat radian cut ring. It's so big though. Like it looked fake. Like it looked like a cocktail ring. That thing was massive. And it was designed by Jennifer Mayer, who was married to Tobey Maguire at the time. Mm-hmm. She's done like a bunch of celebrity. I mean, I'm sure everyone has seen her stuff. So now it's May 2013. Angelina reveals in a New York Times op-ed that she is undergoing a preventative double mastectomy. She mentions how supportive Brad was through all of this, that he, flew on the next flight to be with her, and that this was the right thing for their family. I remember she got a ton of positive press for that.
Yeah,
and
Angelina was really affected by the loss of her mother. Her mother, I believe, died of breast cancer. And I feel as though she wasn't really, her father was the actor, but I don't think they were really close. And I think her mom really raised her.
And one of the twins, I believe, has her mom's name, Marceline.
Mm-hmm.
I think Vivian has her mom's first name as her middle name. In happier news, in August 2014, they finally get married. 22 family members at this celebration, their children at their French chateau.
There's 21 of them.
There's 21 of their kids at their French chateau for an intimate wedding ceremony in a Miraval, which I know that they have like a winery there or something. And then in August 2015, a year later, Jen and Justin tied the knot at like a surprise wedding. Didn't not even half the guests know that they were showing up for a wedding.
I love that too. God, I just love Jennifer Aniston and Justin Theroux. I would have loved if they rode off on his motorcycle into the sunset.
I know. I'm so sad that they didn't work out.
But didn't Brad and Jen had that movie, though, that they shot in the south of France? It was called By the Sea. It's a tremendously boring movie, but it's actually the one movie besides Mr. and Mrs. Smith that I've seen with Angelina Jolie. And it is stunning aesthetically. You should watch it and just put it on mute and it's stunning imagery to have on in the background.
I trust your aesthetic, so I will do that. Okay, so now it's August 2016 and Angelina files for divorce from Brad, citing irreconcilable differences. She requests primary custody of their 6 children. And her lawyer releases a statement saying that this decision was made for the health of the family. She will not be commenting and asks that the family be given its privacy at this time. The fact that this is coming from a lawyer versus, a publicist or a joint statement, I feel like just shows the severity and how they were not coming to this divorce as a united front as we saw with Brad and Jen. What do you remember thinking when you heard that they were getting divorced? I was shocked.
So I remember, because since the divorces, obviously, so there was the dawn of social media. So Instagram was much more prevalent. So I remember that's how I found out. And I remember seeing the cover of the New York Post, I believe, or the Daily Mail or something, was a zoomed in picture of Jennifer Aniston where she's dying laughing. And it's ha ha. Is the caption on the post. And I just remember seeing that and being yes.
Tucker, so petty.
No, it's so petty. But the media was it's so funny to see what the internet and the media did in the dawn of kind of memes and creation.
Right.
And then obviously there was a lot more to that divorce that we didn't know at the time. So I think that there were people from the second Brad and Jen got together that were rooting for them to fail. It's you build somebody up so big just so that you can take them down. And here was this couple that seemingly, they went off together and had 6 kids in this blended family of children and adopted children. And, how beautiful was it? And they were out there saving the world and filming movies. And it was all just too good to be true. And I think that a lot of times people see celebrities like this, and because they're good looking and they're rich and they have all of these resources, people like to watch stuff like that fail because it just means that they're human. And it's kind of that gotcha moment.
Wow, that's such a good way of putting it. I was so shocked. I couldn't believe it. I mean, they'd been together for so long. It seemed like just, a couple years after being married, what could have changed? What could have gone so wrong? And obviously we know that there have been some pretty serious allegations from Angelina against Brad. So obviously.
Yeah, it would have to be serious too, because imagine all that they went through together as a bonding. They went through... Right. Probably the biggest scandal in pop culture of the early aughts, definitely. Mm-hmm. And so to go through that, I imagine you have such a bond, and then also to be traveling around and having 6 kids together, something has to go down, and obviously we want to be super sensitive to the legal proceedings, but they're still going on. It's very litigious and there's children involved, and you just want to make sure, that everybody can find some kind of peace in all of it.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, no matter what our feelings were on the origins of this relationship, it goes without saying that we wish nothing but healing and peace for Angelina and her family and her kids. I mean, that's traumatic also for your parents to have been the subject of all of this fodder.
I feel really bad for celebrity children in a lot of different ways, like whether we're talking about Kim and Kanye's kids or Brad and Angelina's kids, or even like Suri Cruise. Like Suri Cruise turned 18 a couple weeks ago, and I only know that from like paparazzi photos that I saw of her on Instagram. And I'm just like, it's so weird that like Suri made her debut on the cover of Vanity Fair. And I just remember our French teacher talking about it in class following Monday, you know, and us having opinions about children.
And her name.
But I just think it was a different kind of the media. And we talk about Perez Hilton during that time too, where Perez Hilton was posting photos of other people's children and making comments about their appearance. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it was such an interesting, monstrous time in the media where we all felt like we had an opinion about things that nowadays I feel as though we'd be a little bit more protective, particularly of the kids. Like you don't see paparazzi photos of kids that often anymore. A lot of times their faces are blurred, which I really respect.
Oh, 100%. And I mean, kudos to the celebrity parents who have been really like leading legislation around that, because I think America is really behind in that. I believe that in the UK or something, there are laws that protect children from getting their photos published online or in the media. But I think the US is lagging behind in that regard. But a lot of celebrities have just totally cut off access to those media outlets that don't respect the same courtesy of keeping their children anonymous, because they deserve that. They didn't sign up for this.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's go back to our timeline. We're now at February 15th, 2018, the day after Valentine's Day. Jen announces her split from Justin after just 2.5 years of marriage. I know we just said how much we love them as a couple. I was so sad.
I was so sad too, but I feel like they really were like besties splitting up. Like it was actually like kind of the polar opposite, and obviously circumstantially completely different, but it was like a joint friendly statement of we heard of like two best friends who just lived on different coasts and couldn't, you know, just didn't kind of have that relationship, versus Brad and Angelina, which was obviously released from a lawyer, right? So it's like apples and oranges, completely different.
So just a year later, Jen and Brad start hanging out, it seems. Maybe their statute of limitations for themselves had lifted. So Brad got an invitation to Jen's 50th birthday party in February of 2019, which was at the Sunset Tower Hotel. And this just invited so much speculation, like, oh my God, are they rekindling something? People continued to tell media sources that they're just friends. But then in December of 2019, we close out the year with more speculation around Jen and Brad when he scores an invite to her holiday party. And a source told Entertainment Tonight that he was among the first to arrive and the second to last guest to leave at 11 p.m., which is kind of early. I would expect that their parties to go a little bit later.
They're old.
Not that old. Like, it's a holiday party.
I go to bed early.
I get it, but I'm also like, that's not that crazy. If they left out that detail, then I would have assumed he was there until like 3 a.m. But I don't know. It's just a juicier story.
I know, but you have to remember their audience is the mouse and this is the cookie.
You're so right.
We'll take anything we can get about Brad and Jen.
Well, speaking of that, just a month later, they reunited on the Screen Actors Guild red carpet and showed some flirtatious body language. There was some photographs of them. They are holding hands and he's grabbing her arm, and everyone was like, oh my God, is this the moment where they get back together? Do you remember those photos?
The backstage photo of him longing for her and reaching for her. I remember, I don't think I did any work that day, the following day.
All these years later, it still captivates us.
Totally. It's just because it was a conversation that was just so big that this will be big for the rest of our lives. And honestly, with the Brad and Angelina thing too, and the Jennifer thing, for millennials, it happened at such a pivotal time in our lives. And it was also kind of like one of the last big stories before Facebook.
And that's not all. In September of 2020, Brad and Jen reunite again for a charitable table read of Fast Times at Ridgemont High. So all these actors, Morgan Freeman, Matthew McConaughey, Julia Roberts, they all played characters to raise money for this charity. And Jennifer read for Linda and Brad read for Brad. And there's some flirty dialogue in there. So once again, our tongues are wagging and we just can't get enough. But in June of that year, Jen sets the record straight for this flirty table read. On the Howard Stern show, Howard asks Jen if the reunion was awkward at all. And she says, no, it was absolutely fun. Brad and I are buddies, like we're friends, and we speak. There's no oddness at all, except for everyone that probably watched it and was wanting there to be. What do you think about that?
I love it.
Buddies?
Yeah, I mean, listen, you go through so much of your life. Like, you go through it's not so much of their life. They were only together for 7 years, but it was because of the way that the media consumed it. Like, it's honestly felt like they've been together all of this time in a certain way, because they were together on the cover of every magazine for so many years after they were married. So there's always a connection there. I was really happy to see it. I knew when I first saw that image after the Screen Actors Guild Awards that, like, there's no fucking shot in hell that they'll actually get together. But that being said, it was, I think, another thing that America just loved to see and craved to see in a world that was, like, kind of increasingly darker. There was
during the pandemic.
There was a president in the White House, that people didn't want to be there. And I think people were longing for some good news.
Some light fodder.
Yeah.
And that's what that was, 100%. And later that week, right after she sets the record straight on Howard Stern in June 2021, Jen spoke to People about her thoughts on remarrying. She said that she wants to just find a fantastic partner, live an enjoyable life. It doesn't have to be etched in stone in legal documents, though. She said that she just wants to stick to normal ways of dating. She wants someone to ask her out. She wants it to happen naturally and organically, it sounds like. So our girl Jen has still not given up on love, even though she probably had one of the most traumatic breakups of all time, plastered across every news outlet imaginable. Just inspiring. I like Jen Aniston a lot.
I love her. And honestly, hold on, wait. Going back to the Vanity Fair article, one thing that I thought was really funny / sad was Jennifer Aniston admitting that she picked up a tabloid and Kim Stewart, Rod Stewart's daughter, called her homely, and it ruined her day.
Yes. Kimberly Stewart.
Kimberly Stewart. She called Jen Aniston homely, and it ruined her day. I'm like, after that article came out, Kim Stewart must have been like, fuck. Because it was like in touch too.
I know. But it's also such a good reminder that celebrities are humans, and your comments on social media, like, they read them, and it's mean.
Oh, totally. Jen Aniston in 2005 and 2006. It's like the Britney in 2007. Like, if Jen Aniston, from a love perspective, can make it through 2005 and 2006, then nobody else should give up on love. If Jennifer Aniston hasn't, that's got to give something. That's got to give to all of us single girls out there.
All the ladies in the place with style and grace. I so agree, Tuck. So what are your final thoughts on this bombshell love triangle for the ages?
I would just say the one interesting really thing about it is kind of how we saw this narrative play out in the media, just because I think that it plays into so much of our cultural references for the time are related to these moments. Like, I feel as though, my middle school and early high school years were really tied to this event happening. Like, I would go home and watch E! News like every single night at 7 p.m. to find out the news about this and read about it in Perez Hilton at school. Like, it was something that I was so invested in that, from like a pop culture perspective, knowing now that I kind of work in pop culture, as do you, it's interesting that kind of started it all,
right?
In terms of our understanding.
Yes. When everyone's like, what's the first big news story you remember? We're like, Brangelina.
Literally.
But closing remarks, if Jen can still believe in love, so can you. And speaking of love, we love all of our listeners. Thank you so much for listening. Tucker, thank you so much for coming on When They Popped. I know we've been talking about doing this for a while, and I'm so glad it finally happened.
Kelsey and Mary, thank you guys so much for trusting. Mary, thank you for trusting me with your seat. And Kels, thanks so much for having me on. Honestly, this was like therapy for me, being able to talk about this love triangle. I feel like it's like somehow I've found peace in this. So thank you.
Oh my God, Tucker, that's so deep on a Saturday afternoon. I love it. It feels very natural to do it with you, even on a microphone. So thank you so much for spending your afternoon with me. Everyone, thank you so much for listening. Please feel free to leave us a review wherever you listen to your pods, and make sure you're following us at When They Popped Pod on Instagram and TikTok. Thanks, everyone. Bye. Do you want to say bye with me, Tucker?
Bye.
Bye.